Okay, Kara, I got to ask you the question I always love to ask when we start this podcast. Can you believe we're having this conversation?
I can believe it. And I wrote it in my journal about a year ago that I wanted to be on the podcast. So yes, definitely. I knew it was going to happen.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so tell me about that because, I hear this so often from women that they'll write it down, they'll put it on a vision board. Tell me how did that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the, projects or activities or whatever you want to call it that you gave us was, kind of write what's going to happen. And so there were a lot of times where I would say, in a certain couple of weeks, I'm going to test positive, and then I'm going to let you know right away. I think I let you know like 5 minutes after I've been tested. But no, I wrote it down that I was going to be on the podcast. I didn't know when, but when I got your message a couple weeks ago, am I going to be on it? I was so excited. But yeah, no, it's definitely written in my journal that I will be one of your ladies. I'll be on here, I'll be able to listen and share with others.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that just makes my heart sing when I think about that because, Kara, it's so humbling. Like when I think about all of you who have been on the podcast, who have come through the programs, like it's incredible to me to be witness to all of you living the dream. Like you came, that's amazing to me. Like you're women of integrity. You made a decision that you were going to beat the odds, and you ultimately do because you kept your word to yourself. It's just incredible. So why don't you start us off? I mean, now that we've asked that question that I love to ask, why don't you start by sharing with the ladies listening a little bit about how you found yourself on this journey and then how we met?
So back, I guess, before we met, so back 2020, I was able to conceive my first daughter naturally. So we had been trying for about a year. My cycles were pretty all over the place. Doctors diagnosed with PCOS. So at that point, I wasn't really ready to go down the fertility journey yet. I figured we're just starting. It's only been, at that point, a couple months. So I did adjust diet. I lost about 30 pounds, low carb, low sugar, kind of readjusted everything just to go the more natural route at first. The doctor, OB, did put me on metformin. I don't know if it was that or the healthy eating and the working out and stuff like that. So I was able to conceive naturally my daughter, had her in December. So the whole pregnancy was COVID. It was so much fun with that. So I had her, and then, I was nursing for about 9-10 months. As soon as I stopped that, my cycle started to come back. After 3 cycles, I ended up getting pregnant again. We did lose that baby, miscarriage. I had a DNC. At that point, I don't think we were really trying. We were just kind of like, cycles are coming back. Let's see how life's going to go with a 1-year-old at that point. But of course, once you realize that your body won't let you, or, there's a stall, that's all you can think of, like the main thing in our life. So I tried getting back on the metformin, just thinking that the magic drug, which was not magic, was going to work this time. It didn't. So about, 10, 11 months later, my OB recommended us to a local fertility clinic. So we went there. They did a workup on both my husband and I. He actually started a vitamin, just kind of got some things a little healthier. But at that point, it had been a year since, we lost the baby. I was really in a dark place. Kind of everything was negative mindset. So one of my neighbors actually was listening to your podcast at the time, and she was realizing that, everything that was coming out of my mouth was, not excited to keep trying. It was kind of like focusing on the past, the negatives, stuff like that. So she sent me a couple links. I was hooked. I think I listened to the first 30 episodes in the first month or whatever. So that was March 1st of 2023. And And then by April 1st, I joined the Full Throttle. So the Fearlessly Fertile, the 90 days. So that was when I started, every day for 90 days, 15, 30 minutes a day were kind of spent listening to each recording, journaling, kind of doing whatever the daily habits were. And so that's kind of how I found you. And then we went on to a couple IUIs last summer. I remember the second IUI I posted in the Telegram group, excited, nervous that I was going in for it. And I remember you sent like a voice message just kind of saying, kind of go into it in a place of knowing, don't put too much pressure on this one. When it works, you're going to have 40 weeks of pressure. So just kind of be in the mindset of that. And then do something for yourself afterwards. I remember we went to the zoo. At that point, I was all into, seeing life being out there, flowers being all, it was like abundance of life and flowers and stuff. And I remember at the zoo, they had a bunch of baby lions. And I remember how cute I thought it was. I was like, this is the universe telling me, there is life happening and stuff like that. So that one didn't work, but it was fine. So then we had a third IUI, switched to IVF mid-cycle. We did get pregnant in November. And so I am 26 weeks today. I'm still letting the cat out of the bag. But I think, I think as soon as we did get that positive pregnancy test in November, all the stuff that you've been helping, me and the different ladies with, you need that when you get the positive. It's not like you always say, like, things don't just magically turn over and then everything's fixed. It's almost like a whole new set of worries and stress. Every time I would feel myself getting excited or telling people or thinking about the future, I would get that just saboteur or kind of fear in my head of, don't let yourself get too excited because, something could happen. So I asked, I started reading the book about after getting pregnant. And then one of the main things that I think really has helped me from that book is kind of like the pre-scan ritual type thing that you had talked about with like a ball of pink light around.
Oh, you mean my fearless? Oh, you mean the Fearless Pregnancy book? Okay, I wasn't sure if you were talking about my book or something else.
So that book,
so
it was helpful because it was definitely like, I think you realized, once, obviously, like I said, once someone gets pregnant, some people think that it's magically going to be this fairy tale of everything, but then it's like all these new stresses come. So every time I went to the appointments, every time something, maybe you didn't feel pregnant at the time, I was just always picturing that ball of pink light. It was just me, the baby, Gus, kind of, it's just all of us, what we're doing. And that always helped me get through the appointments. I think my husband, kind of looked at me like, what are you doing over there? But I'm like, I just need a minute. I need to calm down. But yeah, so.
Wow, that's incredible, Kara. So, okay, so let's back up the bus a little bit because you were dropping so many bombs there, like with all of this goodness. So you basically went from listening to this crazy lady on a podcast that your neighbor recommended to doing this program. Like, I'm super curious, and I'm always curious about this because in a highly medicalized society, the first thing we go to is medicine, treatments, all that other stuff, which is fine. Like, it's a wonderful tool. But I'm curious about what made you want to look into this mindset thing, because it could have been super easy for you to just say, you know what, I don't need to listen to any of that. I'm just going to take my metformin, which didn't end up working for you, but and I'm going to do all this treatment stuff. Like, why did you make the 90-day commitment to yourself? Because that's ultimately what you did in Full Throttle.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the same time, like I said, I had done the low carb, the low sugar with with my daughter, and I always felt like that was a lot of it too. So that had something to do with it. I didn't necessarily want to just put more drugs in my body without trying different things. And I knew that My body definitely reacts to stress, definitely reacts to if I am negative about something or if I worry about something, I can feel things going on that I know kind of just stop what's going on. And so instead of just kind of letting a doctor say, let's just put you on these 14 meds, which I ended up doing. But, it was just kind of another opportunity. And I felt like being a new mom, being in a different, I guess, mindset, didn't necessarily only do it for the second pregnancy. I wanted a better mindset to be the mom for my daughter as well. There were a lot of things in the 90-day program that had nothing to do with getting pregnant. It had something to do with, letting things go, focusing on the positive. I think a big thing was that things didn't necessarily happen. I was always like, oh, it happened to us or it happened, negatively, but it, rethinking that things happen for us now and kind of that kind of mindset switch. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely helped with obviously getting pregnant, but then also, like I said, being a better wife, mother, kind of friend, just person, not being so, I don't know what the best word is, but anxious and stressed and stuff like that.
Were you nervous when you started that? Because that's kind of a leap, lady. It's a kind of a leap to go from podcast to like a 90-day commitment. Mm-hmm. Like, what was the thing that really pushed you over that line? Because, had you ever invested in yourself in that way before?
I don't know. I think it was just feeling like almost like rock bottom. Like, I felt like the podcasts were definitely aligning. A lot of the women that were talking and some of the things that you were saying was exactly what I was feeling. I was definitely stressed. I remember even like pressing the submit button when, signing up. I was like, oh my God, am I doing? And it's like, it's not a big deal in the big scheme of things, but it's still like you're making a big decision and stuff like that. I had done, like, I listened to the podcast. I think you had a workshop where it was like a 2-night workshop that I attended. And I think that's when I heard about the 90-day program. And I know you always ask ladies, like, or don't ask permission to do it. Just, do it with, if you want to do it. And I remember talking to my husband about it. And yeah, he was like, if you want to do it, you're going to do it. It's something that is going to help you and push you forward. And he actually, during it, I was talking to him last week when preparing for this, and he was like, you totally changed. You totally changed into a better version of yourself. And when I finished the 90 days, he could tell that I was slowly slipping back, and he encouraged me to do it again, kind of redo it all with a different mindset. So no, he was totally on board. I think there was one day something happened and he mentioned it. He was like, oh, maybe that was Gus. And I thought at that moment, it was so sweet that, it was kind of like trickling into him.
Oh my gosh, Kara, that's hilarious. So like the husbands are all like, this is, I think what I love about what you're sharing here is two things. Number one, so many of us shrink back because we say, oh, I need to talk to my husband about this. And it's like, you're a grown ass woman and your husband already believes in you. Like, and he basically told you, you're already going to do, what you want. Like, why yeah, exactly. So like, why would you shrink back from your own authority as a woman who trusts herself? And maybe that was part of it, is learning to trust yourself at some level. And I think the other part of this, which is interesting, is that the husbands tend to start off a little skeptical, but when they start seeing the change, they're like, boom.
Yeah, if they get to deal with us in a more happy mindset than our other selves. But yeah, no, he was always, very supportive of it. I think he would, after a couple of our group sessions, he would ask me how it went. And of course there's things that you're like, we'll talk about it after I digest it a little bit. But there were definitely things, like I said, in the group calls and in some of the 90-day information that was more about, fixing relationships or fixing whatever is causing some of these issues that's blocking getting pregnant. And a lot of it, I think, was conversations between me and him and things about controlling and stuff. So I think it was more than just fertility. It was like not marriage counseling, but it was definitely helpful of having and figuring out how to have those conversations.
Yeah, and you're so right. That's such a critical part of all of this is like the way we do one thing is the way we do everything, Kara, and we have patterns. And if we hold on to certain patterns in our work, in our relationships, with our families, people think, oh, well, that doesn't have anything to do with fertility. Yeah. And it's like, well, actually, yes, because if you're blocking receiving what it is that you desire from your partner at work, things like that, do you think you're not doing that everywhere?
Yeah. And I definitely saw, once we started actively trying, we met with the fertility clinic. It was like everything in my life revolved around, trying to conceive. And that's not what I wanted. We weren't able to enjoy ourselves, enjoy our time with our daughter who was here with us. Probably, if you think about that year of her life, obviously I was there, we were doing stuff, but you look back and you're like, wow, like I was so just focused on, okay, I'm going to test in a couple days, or this is when this next thing is going to start, or, what did the fertility clinic say? So it's definitely a lot of things in the head that, that just needed to be settled down.
Wow. That's another really interesting point that you're raising, Kara, because for when a woman struggles to have a second or third baby or beyond, I think we forget that if we don't have our head on straight, we're not actually present with the children that we have. Like, nobody wants to think about that, but I think you're raising a very important point because you don't get that time back. So you get to choose how you're showing up.
Yeah. And she was, at that point, she's 2-3 years old, and she just has no idea. She just wants me and wants my attention. And I think there was a lot of, whether I was listening to your podcast in my headset while I'm watching her, or, getting frustrated because she's not going down for bed because I just want to read the book or listen to more podcasts. So it was just kind of definitely getting the, middle road for that. But yeah, no, there was a lot of things that I was realizing, and like kind of back to your question, why I joined was because I was noticing kind of like the spiral effect of, if I keep down this road, I'm going to be spending less time focusing on her and spending less time with my husband and stuff like that.
Wow. So, okay. So you were diagnosed with PCOS, and then, so you guys had done a couple rounds of IUI, and then one of those turned into IVF.
Yeah. So they had switched one of my meds into like an injectable form. So before it was just taking a pill certain days of the month. And at that point, I think I had grew like, I don't know, 20, 30 follicles. And they were like, we cannot do an IUI. We don't need like 60 babies. I was like, well, I'll take any. But yeah, so we switched over mid-cycle. We did a retrieval and then just kind of let the body relax a little bit. We didn't just do the transfer right away. But yeah, I think at that point we were still deciding, and that was one of the things I also struggled with. I think and a lot of the, a lot of your ladies do conceive naturally. And I think in my mind, I was still kind of fighting IVF is IUI, or natural. And I was kind of like, if everyone else can do natural, then I should be able to do it. But then I was also on another side of it as, I was trying to receive and accept help. So I think at that point it was kind of like, I could do natural again. I know I did it with my daughter. I know my body, eventually can do it. But there was one session where it was just kind of like, let people help you, accept the help, accept people, whether that's the doctors, whether that's, different bump squad people in the community, but just kind of let people in, let people experience this with you. And that was when I was like, I don't know why I'm fighting this. We're kind of on the path. The doctors, the nurses were great. Everyone was supportive. But yeah, that was a big thing for me too, of deciding, do I really push for this natural, or do I push for IVF?
It's so funny because that's what we do to ourselves, right? Like we kind of get into this really locked up place where we're not making decisions from possibility. It's,
Right.
well, if other people are
Comparing to
doing
other
it, why
people.
can't I?
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, you're exactly right. It's all about comparison. And when you're in that place of comparison, you're not in your clarity. You're not in your power. You're allowing what other people are doing to have authority over you instead of you deciding, hey, you know what, for where my husband and I are at, this
Right.
actually feels good to me.
Yep. So I remember that being, I think, on one of our calls. I think that was, one of my questions of, how do I decide which way to go if I feel like you said, I shouldn't be comparing myself to others. This is our situation. And that's one of the things that I do, I do like affirmations or just kind of talk to myself throughout the day, every day still. And I just tell myself, even if other people, chose different options, even if other people have trouble with their pregnancies, possibly like I, miscarried, that has nothing to do with this pregnancy. I keep telling myself, it's like, it's all about me. It's nothing, like, it's just a whole different mindset of comparing yourself versus, like, it has nothing to do with you. You see stories online, you see people that have issues and they're like, what if that happens to me? And you compare yourself, like you were just saying, and it's not worth it.
You're making mama proud, Kara. You're making
I was
really
reading through all of my notes and I was taking some notes on, things that I remember that kind of hit home. And I'm like 2 pages in and I'm like, well, I can't just read off bullet points on this, on this podcast. But there were so many things that I feel like that have just changed me in just a year.
And that's actually a really interesting point, was that, if you look, we're basically a year from when you started.
Yeah. All it took.
And in the first 90 days, you're just learning this material and like you started applying it, you started living it, you're talking to yourself, you're doing all kinds of things that your husband's probably like, but look at, and people think I'm messing around when I say I work with women who are committed to getting and staying pregnant in the next 12 months. And you're living proof again that is possible.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know. It was, because the 90 days started April 1st. And it's end of April. So.
Yeah. And you're 26 weeks pregnant. I mean, this is, it's just extraordinary. So what are some of the things that you think are going to impact you the most moving forward? Like you use certain tools to help you get into that place where you could receive, where you stopped comparing yourself, you stopped being a freaking negative Nancy in your neighborhood, right? And you stopped using the past against yourself, and you were able to move forward from a heartbreak of miscarriage. Like, what do you? How do you think this is going to serve you moving forward?
Yeah, I think one of the sessions talked about kind of letting go of the past, writing letters, not necessarily giving them to people. But I did hold on to a lot of things that even, from my childhood, through now, whether it had with fertility or anything else, I think I was always just holding a grudge or holding on to that. So I think that definitely helped. Even now, if something bothers me, just think, does this really affect me? Is it really going to make a difference in a week or a year or anything like that? So thinking about it like that, I think the control that I talked about, a big thing of wanting to be in control. Yeah. Especially when you have kids.
You're a little controlling, Kara.
I always tell my husband that he's controlling, and he's like, you realize we're both controlling in like different ways, so which makes it even harder. And then my daughter, of course, gets it from both of us, I think. But, when she was 1 or 2, controlling naps and controlling, we've got to go to this thing at a certain time. That would just stress me out, and it would kind of turn into a whole spiraling thing. So, and like you said, everything rolls over into itself. So controlling of personal aspects and work and infertility. So I think that's been a big thing that I'll be able to continue working on. And then I think one of the other things that I didn't mention was in some of your podcasts, you talk about statistics, and doctor, you go to the doctor and you find your results, and then everyone's so fixated on results. That was a big thing for me too, is, you get blood work done and you immediately start looking in the app and you're like, okay, freaking out. And then you Google it and compare it to everyone else. And so there were a lot of times this last year during the IUIs and the IVFs where, it would be not necessarily great news. But I would just be like, who cares? Like, it's just a number. It's not necessarily like, this is what it's going to be the next, how many cycles we're going to be doing. But I think that too is a big thing of getting away from that, doctor numbers mindset and just kind of believing that, this isn't permanent. Things can change each cycle.
What?
I know,
Sarah,
a couple more things.
We need to repeat. Yeah, we need to repeat that like multiple times, because people, and this seems to be kind of an interesting theme in our conversation, is all about authority, right? Like, just think about who you've become, because it would have been really easy for you to beat yourself up saying, well, I have a daughter, I'm being greedy, all of this other crap that I think we hear also. A lot of this weird cannibalism, within the fertility community, where they say, oh, well, if you're, just be happy you have one. But you were so dialed in to your desire, and you had really clear ideas in your heart that another child was meant for you, that you like blew past all of that insanity, and then were able to take control of your thought process, even when it came to statistics and numbers. I mean, that's massive.
Yeah, and both my husband and I are only children. So we both knew we wanted to have, at least one sibling for our daughter. So yeah, it was never a question of if, it was, when is this going to happen, which is out of our control. And how, which is also out of our control, but it was never a if. So.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, so if you were going to share with the ladies listening, because millions of women are going to listen to this, and
right.
No pressure. But yeah. But if you were going to say, like, look, because that's the way I like to interact with people. If I only have one interaction with people, what would I want it to be? What is a truth that I would want to tell that hopefully at some level they would take in? Because you're sitting on the other side of this journey now, Sarah. You beat the odds. You found a way to apply what you were learning, and now you're 26 weeks pregnant. So what are a few things that you would love for the women listening to really take to heart from your experience?
Yeah, I think, and some of these things we've already touched on, but the fact that so many of these things bleed into other parts of our life. So whether it's work stress, home stress, trying for a baby, everything is interconnected. Again, with the control, I always wanted to be in control of fertility, kind of looking, okay, if we get pregnant this month, I will have the baby this month. And then this is how, we'll be able to dress the baby on Christmas. And this, it's like, that has, it's just so out of control and so crazy to even put into, so, kind of that mindset switch of, I know the baby is coming. The baby will find us when the baby is ready. I think there was a couple of sessions where, it was, do some things to stand out, to let the baby know you're ready. So we would, didn't necessarily put like a nursery together, but I bought a couple new outfits, a couple items, when we were doing just different like meditations and thinking stuff like that. For some reason, I always was thinking like a nautical theme for the baby. But that was more a baby boy. It's a girl. So I have like a sailboat in one of the rooms still that I would always walk by and see. When I was looking at my journals, I had drew some sailboats. So just kind of switching that mindset of, we are ready for you, baby, whenever you are ready for us. And then again, just the other thing of having that positive mindset of things happening for us instead of against us. Put that energy into opening yourself up for this baby to come find you. And I think if I would have heard myself say that like a year or two ago, I would have been like, what is this girl talking about? But it's so true. Like there's so many things that, it's crazy. All the negativity and stress that you're putting out. It's no wonder that your body or your baby is like, I think I'm going to hold back and wait a little bit until this, woman gets it under control. But so that would be what I'd say.
Oh my goodness, Carol. Well, it's such a delight to have this time with you and really see how far you have come, because so many people will choose to hold on to their negativity as opposed to doing the work to be in a place where they can achieve the things that they want to achieve. I mean, because now, like, you've called in 2 babies now. Everything else, Kara, is a piece of cake. Go start a business, go get another degree, whatever it is that you want to do, because you're proving to yourself. And I mean, it's heartbreaking that we have to prove it, but sometimes that's like part of our life's, situation where we have to remember that we have the power. And we need reminders like this to come into our lives to say, yeah, when I put my mind to something, I can absolutely do it. So, what you've shared here is such gold. It's so generous. It's so kind. And just know that you are touching other women's lives by sharing your experience and showing them that they can do it too. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I can't wait to see pictures of the baby in the Telegram group. And so thank you so much, woman.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.